Well, good morning and welcome to Coffee with Ken. I'm Ken Biberaj, a managing director at Savills, a global tenant advisory commercial real estate firm. We are in week 24 of social distancing as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic. In the news today, the Republican National Convention is underway and protests continue in Wisconsin after Jacob Blake, unarmed, was shot 7 times by police on Sunday. Today's topic is why cities are essential. And there is no better expert for today's conversation than Clarence Anthony, the CEO of the National League of Cities. Wonderful to see you, sir.
Wonderful to see you too, Ken. And thank you for having me. And I got my coffee, and I hope you have your coffee with Ken's because I'm ready.
Unfortunately for you, you're probably going to get a mug in the mail any day now.
I love it. I'd love it. I got to get me some marketing stuff like that.
You do. Well, look, let's start at the top. I mean, it's week 24. How are you and your team doing? How are you holding up? I see it looks like you're in your office.
Yeah, week 24. We never imagined that we would be here in 2020, but we are, and we're responding. We are not 100% back in our office. Mm-hmm. Probably only about 5% of the staff is approved to come. And so we had a plan that we have instituted to be healthy, safety, as well as listening to the mayor and other local leaders and the health experts. It's been different for us because we are a membership organization that's been around almost 100 years. And much of what we do, we have conferences, convenings, and so everything is flipped to virtual. And I can tell you, our elected officials, our mayors, our council members, they miss each other because anytime you have a virtual call, you should see them saying, hello, I want to see you again. But it's been tough for us, but we're doing okay.
Yeah. Well, listen, I mean, one of the themes through all of these coffee conversations has really been the burden on local leaders, local officials, cities, and responding. I mean, what do you, this seems like the perfect storm from obviously a public health crisis, a crisis on the economy, issues of racial injustice emerging. Well, what are you hearing on the streets from leaders and mayors across the country?
Yeah, well, first, you're right. I mean, we got a trifecta or a tri-pandemic, if you will, because the issues related to the COVID-19 response, it's on the backs of municipal leaders. They are the ones that you see on TV talking about what's happening in their community. They're the ones that they are providing PPEs and food and other things to their citizens. And in addition, they are dealing with the issues related to and response to systemic racism in America. It's at the front doorsteps of a lot of mayors, and you've seen the stories around America where those that are asking for change, they're showing up at the homes of the mayors. And then the economy. You know, maybe the market is doing well, but when you think about economic economy and recovery, you think about jobs as well as production. And both of those issues for municipal leaders, it's not prospering for everybody. Everybody is not prospering in America right now. So it's been hard on our members, our mayors and council members throughout America. And the final thing that people expect, Ken, from them, and you've been involved in local government a little bit, is that they're expected to be healers. They're expected to be the ones that's going to solve everyone's problems. So for me, what I'm concerned about, along with all of those issues, it's the health and mental safety of our members, because it's not easy being a municipal leader at this time. So we're going to keep leading, though, because we raised our hands to run for office, and we said that we would serve our community. We just didn't expect that it was going to be a pandemic of issues related to race. We just did not know this in 2020.
Now there was a big trend, obviously, with cities. I feel like cities were the future. Everyone, was talking about there's just going to be even continued growth in cities, really creating, resilient cities, and all of this kind of conversation. There seems to be obviously a challenge now, right? You read all the time people saying we're going to flee cities or they're not going to come back. I mean, even Jerry Seinfeld had to write in the New York Times that New York's going to survive. What do you see as the future of cities, right? And I guess two-part question, just cities in general, but also educate folks, right? I was pretty surprised when you actually get into the weeds of this. The budgets of cities just vary dramatically, right? Like some cities are sales tax oriented, some are income tax oriented or property tax oriented, have different fiscal years. I mean, just addressing the fiscal needs of cities, and I want to dive into this, isn't an easy thing to do, right?
No, let me start with your first question related to the future of cities. I think cities are going to continue to be a prospering place where people want to be, because as much as this pandemic has changed us, we're hopeful that when we have a solution to the COVID-19 pandemic, that people will continue to want to be a part of a community. They want to continue to be able to meet with each other, have dinner with each other, go to church with each other, service with each other, volunteer with each other, but also raise their family in places that they feel are healthy and safe. Now, will we have to look at other ways of governing? I think yes. I think that the virtual Zooms and the Ring Centrals and the Life Size, all of these platforms are going to be used to engage our citizens more in a more transparent way. And they'll be able to not only ask questions in the chat box as you're looking at a planning and zoning issue, they're going to be able to, from their home, know what is going on. The density issue, I think there will be questions as we look at land use and as we engage with the chambers and other groups. We're going to be a lot different than we were before the pandemic. Now, there's no question that the budgets, the structure of cities are different according to the state. There's some fiscal year, October 1st. There's some on the January 1st, July 1st. The structures are different. Strong mayor, weak mayor. Some cities are responsible for education, very few. But some are, the larger, the New York, the Chicago, San Francisco's, they're responsible for school systems. But what we're seeing most is that because of the pandemic, loss of hotel tax, loss of revenues, property taxes, loss of assessments that we were able to do to return the services to our citizens. And so now what cities are doing, they're having to furlough employees. They're having to lay off employees. They're having to cut back on services because those essential services that we provide, police, fire, they're being impacted. We're seeing it in the largest of cities. So we've been fighting for money, $500 billion over 2 years for local governments, which includes counties, to be able to address these long-term financial issues that we are having. So we got a big challenge ahead, but I will tell you, cities are going to be essential. Cities are going to be the vibrant place for our citizens to be able to raise their kids. I still believe that. It will be different.
I couldn't agree more. Yeah.
It will be different. It needs to be different to address these issues.
So obviously the issues you've been focused on as an organization 6 months ago versus today, obviously some are still similar, but there's a lot of new things you're going to be tackling and focusing on. COVID really is an accelerant. I think it's just highlighting so many issues that have been simmering and percolating. And when we talk about some folks leaving cities, a large percentage of people who are not leaving cities are those from communities of color, who are living in affordable housing. And this has just been such an inequitable impact on those communities. I mean, how do you think that's playing out? I mean, in communities that need the most help, at a time when cities have to cut services. I mean, how is this all kind of, going to play out in the fall, you think?
Yeah, COVID-19 has really elevated and brought to life a lot of the disparities that exist in America. We've always known that health disparities for people of color have always been there. The gap between the unemployment of African Americans and white Americans, the social determinants of health, the amount of asthma, the lack of health care and access has been a part of America. The home ownership gap. I mean, we can go on and on.
Yeah.
But what the pandemic showed us was that people of color, African Americans and Latinos, have had this case pandemic 4 times higher than other categories. The death rate has been 3 times higher. And it all is about the notion that we have to get healthcare right in America. And then, this is not a new thing. When you come to looking at the history of land use planning in America, no wonder the health crisis is more in the African American community because, we cited the railroad tracks. We cited the land use of incinerators and waste sites in those communities. And we have to make sure we acknowledge the history so that we can address the future. What I'm hopeful, and I believe that city leaders will do this, is that we now know where the issues are. So with the dollars we get from the pandemic, the CARES Act, and I'm hopeful another amount of dollars to city officials to be able to address this, they will in fact address these issues that have been brought to light. Because we can't, as America, continue to ignore the issues of systemic racism, institutional racism, and how our policies have caused many of these challenges.
So the new bills being discussed in Congress, you're asking for $500 billion. I think they're putting in a total of nothing, right? Isn't that where we stand today, right? And this is at a time I saw your latest report that just came out. And so far, I think it's a 13% decline in general revenues for most cities, right? I mean, so what's the magnitude of the shortfall the cities are dealing with, and what's the response from Congress?
Well, I can tell you, let me just say this. Until they stop negotiating, and they have thus far, we're going to keep fighting. We have no other option but to fight for our cities, the people that live in our cities. We're seeing the homelessness. We're seeing the increase in mental health challenges in cities. We're seeing the furloughs of our essential service providers like police and fire. We're seeing people lose their homes. I know, Ken, you're in the real estate business. You've seen the eviction rate of people in our communities. We have no other option but to keep fighting. And we're going to keep telling that story to our House members as well as our senators. Our senators right now have not put any money in there for state and local government. And that's a shame. And this is not politics. We're going to see that our nation is going to lag in terms of its recovery because of the inaction. This is inexcusable, it's shameful, and we're going to keep fighting for that $500 billion for state and local governments.
Yeah, and I think you hit the right word, right? Lag. Like we talk about in real estate all the time. Real estate's a lagging indicator. It takes time for tenants to stop paying rent, and then evictions, and then foreclosures, and banks taking property back. Like this is just going to be a slow kind of wave across the country for residential, for office. I mean, how do you kind of convince people, get them to understand that it's not only a plug gap. You really need to make investment over time to help address the fiscal shortfalls, and because none of these cities can take on debt. They all have to balance budgets, right? I mean, this isn't something they can do what the federal government does, right?
Right. I mean, what we're looking for, and a lot of people say a stimulus, we're looking for stabilization at this point, because we can't get to stimulus until we can get to stability. And then we can get to stability, we can get to stimulus, and then we can get to recovery. There are some cycles here that we must go through as a nation. And if our cities are not viable, if they are not strong, our nation is not going to be strong. It starts from the bottom and it rises up in terms of the implementation of all of these policies that are being adopted. I think that there's this perception you can send money to the state, or you can send monies to other levels, and it's just going to easily change our economy. It does not happen that way. The people that live in our communities that are hurting most in rural communities. Now, don't think this is just, when people think about cities, I think about cities, towns, and villages. And I get the calls from the Midwest where unemployment rate is 25%. I get the calls from other parts of our nation, Iowa and other parts, that say, we just don't know what we're going to be able to do as a city, as a community. I get the call from the small businesses that 40% are going under right now. And most of those are women and minority-owned businesses. So I paint this picture for you because I want you to know that this is not just politics for us. We frankly don't care about the Democrat Party and the Republican Party spout. What we care about is our nation and our citizens that live in our nation, Ken. So we're going to keep fighting. I mean, we are laying it all out. We're leaving it out on the field. And I tell you, we're in campaign mode right now as an organization because we don't have a choice.
Yeah.
We really don't have a choice.
It's unbelievable. So let's dive into some of these more rural areas, some of these smaller towns and cities. I read some news this morning in Tuscaloosa, Alabama, University of Alabama. I think they had, obviously in the last week since school came back, I think it was like 560 new cases of COVID. What are your thoughts on schools coming back, smaller towns and communities that are really dependent on some of these private universities? Right? I think this is another thing that's percolating, right? Like a lot of these smaller universities where students don't go back. And if these universities and smaller colleges collapse, what's going to happen to those communities as well? I mean, it's almost like a double whammy where your budget's already having a shortfall. You're already laying off workers and support teams, and these mayors and municipal leaders are making tough decisions there. And then if you add another layer on top of that, where if some of these private universities start to disappear or are forced to close, what happens to all those people, all the faculty and the facilities folks? And, those are anchors in communities.
Yeah, I don't think that our nation understands, again, as you talked about, the diversity of the economy of most cities. You go to Las Vegas, if the casino's impacted, that's one type of economy. The university towns in America are really concerned right now because the majority of them, they are not returning at this time. And they're making the decision based upon, what is happening locally. And that's what we believe in. We believe that mayors in America need to follow the data, the science and the data, and make decisions on what is best for their community. My daughter goes to Howard University, and they're 100% virtual.
Yeah.
So every morning we get up together. She goes to work and I come to work, and her work is, at the kitchen table with her new office there because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Now, I'm also originally from Florida, and the SEC football, the ACC football is big time for our region. However, what I'm hearing is that in certain places it's not working, where people are social distancing and the kids are not following the mask. They're having parties. That's not what we want to see either. But I think the bottom line is the diversity of the economy of America is really important for our senators and our governors to recognize, and that, you know, when you are a university town, you're downtown in Durham and Eugene, Oregon. I just spoke to the city manager of Eugene, Oregon. She's very concerned about the loss of revenue. So we got a lot going on in our nation right now.
So how have municipal leaders changed their priorities in the last 6 months, right? Like maybe 6 months ago, you were focused on infrastructure, access to capital issues. Now it seems like the floodgates have opened up with every possible issue. And then the burden is on local municipal leaders. It seems like the federal government, when COVID hit, kind of said, it's up to you to protect your cities and so on, but the resources didn't necessarily follow. So how do you triage? Like, what do you do first? What are you recommending to your members? What are you seeing them kind of prioritize?
Well, the number one priority is to respond to COVID-19, and those that are dealing with the racial unrest in their communities, they have to deal with those. The other thing is municipal leaders have to balance their budget. They're not like the federal government and other levels of government. They have no other choice. So we're helping them to come up with decision trees on how do they deal with the various issues. We're still pushing for an infrastructure bill. We know that that's still important. We still know that housing is important and homelessness is important for American cities to deal with these issues. But there's no question that the first thing that they're having to do is figure out how do they get the resources for their residents to be able to deal with this COVID-19 response and get the dollars. They also got to continue to deal with the police reform issue that now is also a big deal for us as the National League of Cities and our city leaders as well. So there's quite a bit of issues that are out there. And I know that our leaders will be responsive to those issues, but it's not going to be an easy year, 2020. We can't wait to 2021, hoping that something more positive would be there.
Yeah, I think cities are meant to be incubators, right? I mean, you can kind of pioneer efforts in housing, in resiliency, in addressing climate change, and addressing social injustice and unrest. I mean, and I think sometimes people lose sight of that cities are actually where we kind of test and kind of get the best practices out there.
Yeah, and we are at the National League of Cities the place that stimulate them to do that. And we share those issues. So when we have a convening and a call with our members, they're from all over America. And one of the things that you probably recognize is when a leader talks about their city, they think their city is the best city ever. We got this idea that we want to share and we want to make sure that it works another place. I was just again talking to Eugene, Oregon, and they have this program called Cahoots. It's a 30-year program, but what it is, it's a program that they establish to provide mental health and other support services to citizens when they call 911. Now, doesn't it sound similar to what we're talking about now, that some calls, police don't necessarily need to be there. Mm-hmm. Maybe we send another service provider to help this homeless individual or an issue related to mental health, and not a police officer who's not trained. And then it could escalate into something that is not even that important to have a police professional there. So these ideas have been around, and now it's time to look at them, and that's what we do here at NLC. You know, We lobby, we try to get the best research, the best data, and the best practices. I say they're the next practices, not the best practices.
Oh, I like that. So you were a mayor 24 years in Florida. And I'd be remiss to ask, but we're approaching hurricane season, right? Not that anybody needs anything else to put on their plate and deal with, but how do you think about that? How do you think about these kind of unforeseen things that are potentially going to be coming forward in the fall?
Yeah, I enjoy my new job. Can I enjoy my new job? I can tell you that. I'll say that, growing up in Florida, Florida's ready. You hate to say if a state has experienced something like that so often, that we have hurricane preparedness plans and all of those things. And I just pray and feel for Louisiana and New Orleans and all of those areas. I really do. I will tell you the response on the pandemic is concerning because those numbers are continuing to increase. We're also seeing the impact of the hurricane and being prepared. But again, we are a resilient state, we're a resilient nation. And I am happy that I'm no longer mayor of South Bay, Florida. Every year we came through Palm County.
I am sure.
And I represented a very poor community. And it was always so sad to see the impact of people who are already hurting, having to hurt even more. But one of the things I'll leave with your listeners related to responses like hurricane and even this pandemic, in regards to the hurricane, it's an equalizer.
Yep.
You will see Bentleys, Mercedes-Benz in lines trying to get water and other services, and you'll see an old broken down van going through trying to get water, trying to get their lights on, trying to get support. The difference in the pandemic here is that it's not equal. It really has not been equal because people who are poor still have to be those providers in terms of the restaurants and going out there driving buses and getting those service jobs where you and I are blessed that we are in an office protected with a plan.
Yeah.
When we go out and we see those having to go to work because they don't have any other option, that's what we are fighting for in America right now. Those people that don't have a voice, don't have a face, and that's what the National League of Cities does every day. And it's just a sad time when I see some of the stories and hear some of the stories of the death of people who had to go to work, whether they're law enforcement, fire, or restaurant, hotel workers, teachers. We gotta address this in a scientific, smart way in our nation.
Well, I'm so grateful that you took some time to be with us today, to share some of your initiatives and work. Obviously, you have your hands full, just like every leader of every community across this country, from public health issues, transportation issues, housing issues, economic recovery issues, mental health issues, something that I'm so glad is getting more attention these days. That really wasn't something that I don't think we were talking enough about. That it's incredible. So I know you probably miss being mayor a little bit, but now you're the mayor of all mayors. So I think you're an important voice in Washington, and really appreciate you coming on today.
Well, thank you. Really appreciate having coffee with you and getting to meet you and know you. And I know that you ran for city council in New York. Man, you lucked out. Now, you're a big timer, got your own podcast or video going on.
I got my own coffee mugs now.
Got your own coffee mug. I want one of those, and I'm going to tell my staff that I get one with my picture on it now.
Yeah, we'll find it.
You've been great, and I really appreciate the opportunity to talk about why cities are essential. Ken, keep in touch.
Absolutely. And to all of our listeners, whether you're in the public sector, private sector, make sure you're helping out your cities and contributing a little bit. So I want to thank everyone for tuning in to Coffee with Ken today. We'll be back after Labor Day. We still have some coffee in the pot, so we're going to continue into the fall. Remember, practice social distancing, wash your hands, and wear a mask. Clarence Anthony, thank you so much.
Thank you. And tell the mayor of Baton Rouge, tell one of your chatters said, Kimberlyn, great mayor in Baton Rouge. Tell her to be great. She is great. All right. Thank you.
Amazing. Wonderful. Take care. Thank you.
The mayor of Baton Rouge. Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye.